In the next 20 minutes, you'll discover why Plato's Allegory of the Cave might be the most important spiritual text you've never truly understood. I'll walk you through the 4 levels of knowing that can transform your perception, reveal why the sun represents more than just truth, and show you practical techniques to break the chains of your own mental prison. By the end of this video, you'll understand why scholars like Roger Penrose, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, consider themselves Platonists. You'll see how this ancient story contains the same wisdom as Eastern traditions like yoga and the Bhagavad Gita. And most importantly, you'll have a clear path to experiencing reality beyond the shadows that have defined your life until now. For those who are unfamiliar, in Plato's Allegory of the Cave, he describes a group of people who have lived chained inside a dark cave since childhood, facing a wall. Behind them there is a fire, and between the fire and the prisoners, people pass by carrying various objects that cast shadows on the cave wall. The prisoners perceive these shadows as reality since they've never seen anything else. One day, a prisoner is freed and forced to turn around and face the fire. Initially dazzled and in pain from the light, the prisoner gradually adjusts and begins to see the objects carried by the people behind him. As the prisoner is dragged out of the cave and exposed to sunlight, they are initially blinded but eventually see the outside world, realizing that the shadows in the cave were mere reflections of a deeper, more complex reality. The allegory symbolizes Plato's theory of forms, suggesting that the world we perceive through our senses is like the shadows on the cave wall, and true knowledge comes from understanding the forms or ideas behind these appearances. It emphasizes the journey from ignorance to enlightenment through philosophical understanding. The cave in your mind. Imagine waking up to realize your entire reality exists as projections on the walls of your mind. Plato's cave is a mental prison, built from layers of limiting beliefs we've accumulated over time. Most people never stop to question whether what they perceive matches actual reality. We mistake the shadows on our cave walls for the complete picture, unaware that there might be more beyond our immediate awareness. The shadows represent the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, our capabilities, and how the world works. Think about scrolling through social media. The algorithm feeds you content that aligns with your existing views, reinforcing what you already believe. This is confirmation bias in action, where we seek evidence that supports our worldview while ignoring what challenges it. These mental patterns act as invisible chains, keeping us locked in familiar ways of thinking. Our brains fill in gaps based on past experiences, creating a coherent but often incomplete picture of reality. Like the prisoners in Plato's cave, we mistake shadows for substance, assumptions for truth. Consider how often you've accepted a belief simply because it felt familiar. I'm not good enough. Success is for others, or the world works this way. These beliefs form early, shaped by experiences and societal conditioning, until they become the unchallenged backdrop of our lives. Picture this: you're driving a familiar route, so lost in thought you barely notice the scenery. You're on autopilot, assuming you know the way. That's how these mental chains work, guiding us through life without questioning whether the path is the best. But here's the difference between Plato's prisoners and us. We hold the key to our chains. The first step toward awakening isn't a grand revelation. It's the simple realization that you're in a cave of your own making. The moment you question whether your perceptions match reality, you begin loosening the chains. Awareness alone can disrupt entrenched patterns, creating space for new ways of thinking. The shadows won't disappear immediately. Our brains cling to familiar narratives. But recognizing the cave as a constructed reality, not an absolute one, opens the door to something greater. Unlike the prisoners, you can turn your head, Examine the chains and begin the journey toward the light. Who controls the shadows? What if the shadows on your cave walls aren't random? What if unseen forces deliberately shape what you perceive as reality? The puppeteers in Plato's Allegory represent the subtle influences that craft our worldview without our conscious consent. These forces include cultural narratives passed down through generations, media cycles reinforcing specific agendas, and subconscious patterns internalized since childhood. Ancient mystery schools warned that most people live under a form of mass hypnosis, mistaking curated illusions for the full spectrum of reality. Consider how early these influences take root. By age 7, modern psychology tells us our core worldview solidifies through social conditioning. The stories about success, relationships, and identity become the framework through which we interpret everything. For example, a child raised in a culture equating wealth with worth may grow into an adult who prioritizes material success over personal fulfillment. These early narratives don't fade, they evolve, shaping how we navigate adulthood. Media and advertising amplify this effect, projecting manipulated versions of reality designed to trigger specific responses. Think of campaigns that equate luxury brands with happiness, or social media trends that glorify unattainable lifestyles. These curated shadows influence desires, fears, and self-perception, often without us realizing it. The most potent puppet masters, however, operate where we least expect them. Unconscious biases like associating leadership with specific genders or assuming certain accents sound more authoritative guide decisions invisibly. Cultural myths about aging or intelligence limit what we believe is possible. Even language shapes perception. For instance, the Inuits' multiple words for snow reflect distinctions others might overlook. Similarly, modern media algorithms act as puppeteers, feeding content that reinforces existing beliefs while filtering out dissenting perspectives. Ancient traditions recognize this dynamic. The allegory's puppeteers mirror the archons in Gnostic texts, hidden forces maintaining illusion. Today, confirmation bias and the spotlight effect act like puppet strings, narrowing perception before we even process an experience. Recognizing these influences is the first step toward freedom. The painful journey to light. Why does breaking free from illusion often feel painful rather than liberating at first? When Plato's prisoner is dragged from the cave, his eyes burn from the unfamiliar light, a perfect metaphor for how unsettling new awareness can be. Growth demands we leave comfort zones behind, and our minds instinctively resist. Psychological studies confirm that people reject information that contradicts their worldview, a defense mechanism called cognitive dissonance. We'd rather dismiss facts than rebuild our mental frameworks, much like the prisoners clinging to their shadow reality. This resistance isn't just psychological, it's also neurological. The brain undergoes a process similar to neural pruning during transformation, where old connections weaken before new ones form. Mystics call this phase the dark night of the soul, where old certainties collapse faster than new ones appear. Teresa of Avila described it as walking through a pitch-black room, searching for a door you can't yet see. Imagine someone realizing their career no longer aligns with their values. At first, the thought feels paralyzing, like losing a part of their identity. But as they sit with the discomfort, new possibilities emerge, even if the path forward remains unclear. The fire outside Plato's cave represents this transitional discomfort. Its light overwhelms the freed prisoner because his eyes adjusted to the darkness, just as we struggle when confronting truths that challenge our assumptions. A materialist might resist evidence of consciousness beyond the brain. A perfectionist might reject the idea that failure fuels growth. The initial glare of truth feels abrasive because it exposes what we've avoided seeing. This phase often triggers the amygdala, activating fight or flight responses even during intellectual breakthroughs. Many abandon their spiritual journey here, mistaking temporary discomfort for a wrong turn. They retreat to the cave's familiar shadows, where the mind's projections feel safer than unfiltered reality. This explains why transformative experiences often follow crisis points. We push through only when staying put becomes more painful than changing. The prisoner who flees back to the cave mirrors those who revert to old habits after glimpsing deeper truths. Yet this painful transition serves a purpose. Just as muscles tear before strengthening, the mind must release outdated frameworks to grasp higher perspectives. Once new neural pathways solidify, they require less energy to maintain than old, inefficient ones. What first demanded effort becomes second nature. The sun as ultimate reality. Plato's sun is a metaphor for truth and a gateway to understanding reality. The form of the good, his concept of divine perfection, isn't just abstract philosophy, it structures existence. While many interpretations stop at calling it an idea, esoteric traditions go further, equating it with the divine light of consciousness. This force not only illuminates reality but actively shapes it. The sun in the allegory reflects a deeper, fundamental layer of being. Quantum physics offers a parallel. Experiments suggest reality emerges from an underlying field of information, a unified ground that gives rise to the world we perceive. This resonates with Plato's vision of the sun as the origin of everything previously known, governing the visible world while pointing to something beyond it. Mystical experiences echo this connection. Those who've encountered near-death or transcendent states often describe a brilliant, loving light, not harsh, but warm and all-encompassing. The sun's life-giving and illuminating properties mirror these descriptions, sustaining truth rather than merely revealing it. The form of the good operates on multiple levels. In the visible realm, the sun regulates seasons and growth. In the intelligible realm, it represents the principles that make knowledge possible. The Neoplatonist philosopher Plotinus expanded on this, describing reality as layers of contemplation where the highest thought and life merge. The supreme life and thought are identical, suggesting the sun isn't just a symbol of enlightenment but the essence of enlightened consciousness. When Plato's prisoner steps into the sunlight, he doesn't simply see more clearly, he participates in a higher mode of existence. This transition is overwhelming because the empirical world is a poor copy of the real world of forms. The sun's light exposes the fragility of our shadow reality. The cave feels safe because it's familiar, but the sun reveals its limitations. This aligns with the Gnostic idea of the material world as a distorted reflection. The real world, as one source puts it, does not need the shadows, as it is beyond them. Plato's vision becomes practical when we embody the form of the good. Dianoia or reason can only take us so far. Gnosis or direct knowing occurs when the soul becomes what it contemplates. Like grasping a profound insight, the sun's light isn't just observed, it's absorbed. The 4 levels of knowing. Your experience of reality depends entirely on how you process information. Plato's divided line maps this progression through 4 levels, determining whether you navigate life through illusions or direct awareness. Most people unconsciously operate at the lower stages, mistaking appearances for reality without realizing there's more to uncover. Aikasia. At the base lies the realm of shadows, where imagination substitutes for truth. Here we accept appearances without scrutiny. like mistaking a social media persona for someone's complete identity or assuming curated feeds reflect reality. Neuroscience shows our brains fill gaps with assumptions, constructing coherent but incomplete narratives. In this state, we mistake mental projections for facts, much like the cave prisoners believing shadows are the entirety of existence. Studies reveal people often prefer familiar falsehoods over unfamiliar truths, reinforcing this illusion. Pistis. The next stage involves belief systems absorbed uncritically from culture or authority. These inherited narratives about success, relationships, or identity often go unchallenged. Cognitive science confirms that core worldviews solidify by age 7, embedding societal scripts about worth and belonging. These beliefs act like puppeteers' props, casting shadows mistaken for universal laws. Confirmation bias perpetuates this, as we favor information that aligns with pre-existing views while dismissing contradictions. Dianoia. This marks the pivot toward active inquiry using rationality and logic. At this level, we analyze underlying structures rather than surface appearances, like solving mathematical proofs or dissecting philosophical arguments. Brain scans show heightened prefrontal cortex activity during such tasks, indicating conscious engagement with abstract concepts. However, intellectual understanding still relies on intermediaries, like studying a menu instead of eating the meal. It's valuable, but incomplete. Noesis. At the summit, knowledge transforms into immediate knowing, what mystics call gnosis. This isn't conceptual understanding, but direct merging with the object of contemplation. Plato describes it as seeing the sun itself rather than its reflections, a shift from reasoning about truth to embodying it. Modern neuroscience finds parallels in transcranial stimulation studies, where subjects report sudden insights bypassing logic. Tibetan monks experiencing non-dual awareness demonstrate similar brainwave synchronization, suggesting unified perception beyond analytical fragmentation. Each stage builds on the last, cultivating faculties necessary for the next. Contemporary psychology echoes this framework, showing how mindfulness and cognitive restructuring help us ascend from automatic thinking to clearer perception. The hero's return. Why does sharing enlightenment often lead to isolation rather than celebration? The freed prisoner's return to Plato's cave mirrors a pattern seen across history. Truth-bearers facing rejection from those still trapped in illusion. When the prisoner describes sunlight to cave dwellers, they ridicule him, preferring familiar shadows over disruptive truths. This scene replays endlessly in human experience. Socrates was executed for corrupting Athenian youth with critical thinking. Galileo, under church pressure, recanted his heliocentric findings. Modern whistleblowers and innovators face similar backlash. Studies show groups systematically punish norm deviators, even when their insights benefit everyone. The myth of Prometheus captures this dynamic vividly. He stole fire from the gods to uplift humanity, only to endure eternal torment. Like Plato's freed prisoner, Prometheus gained transformative knowledge and suffered for sharing it. Joseph Campbell's hero's journey framework identifies this as the return phase, the most perilous leg of transformation. Having seen beyond collective illusions, the enlightened individual becomes a walking contradiction to the status quo. Their presence exposes the fragility of accepted narratives, triggering defensive reactions. Psychological experiments reveal how quickly groups ostracize members who challenge consensus, even on trivial matters. Imagine a freed prisoner standing at the cave's edge, sunlight pouring over them, yet unable to convey its warmth to those below. The cave's prisoners aren't merely ignorant, they're invested in their shadow reality, Their identities and social structures depend on maintaining the illusion. This explains why spiritual teachers often communicate indirectly. Jesus spoke in parables. Zen masters used koans. Sufis told teaching stories. Direct revelation risks overwhelming the unready mind, like shining a floodlight into light-sensitive eyes. Neuroscience shows the brain's neuroplasticity allows for gradual rewiring, but sudden shifts can trigger threat responses. Effective teachers meet students where they are, using shared language and incremental steps. Social conformity studies reveal the mechanisms behind this resistance. Groups enforce norms through subtle cues and outright punishment. One experiment showed participants denying obvious visual truths to conform to group lies. The prisoner's mockery in Plato's Allegory isn't mere stubbornness, it's self-preservation. Accepting the freed prisoner's claims would unravel their entire social construct. Yet the enlightened don't retreat permanently. True awakening balances wisdom with compassion, recognizing that chains feel like safety to those who've known nothing else. Teachers throughout history learned to plant seeds rather than uproot belief systems prematurely. Eastern parallels. The parallels between Plato's cave and Eastern philosophy reveal a shared insight. What we perceive as reality is often an illusion, and liberation comes from seeing beyond it. In Hinduism, Maya describes the veil that distorts our perception, much like the shadows on the cave wall. The material world's fleeting forms and sensory distractions keep us trapped in a limited understanding. Liberation requires not just intellectual understanding but direct experience of what lies beyond the illusion. The sun in Plato's Allegory reflects Brahman, the ultimate reality in Hindu thought, the unchanging source of all existence. Just as the sun illuminates the visible world, Brahman sustains everything. The freed prisoner's journey from darkness to light mirrors the yogic path of darshan, seeing reality as it truly is. Meditation practices in Buddhism and Hinduism guide practitioners to quiet the mind, moving beyond concepts into direct knowing, akin to Plato's noesis. Imagine sitting in stillness, focusing on the breath and feeling the ego's grip dissolve, revealing a glimpse of the light beyond the cave. The Bhagavad Gita offers another striking parallel. Arjuna's crisis on the battlefield reflects the prisoner's struggle to reconcile old beliefs with new awareness. His doubts and fears symbolize the attachments that keep us bound to illusion. Krishna's teachings guide him towards sthita prajna, steady wisdom detached from fleeting appearances. This mirrors the freed prisoner's adjustment to sunlight, emphasizing that truth must be embodied, not just understood. Harmonizing with the sattva, self, the balanced, discerning aspect of consciousness allows one to reflect Brahman's light in daily life. Yoga provides a practical method for this integration. Physical postures, or asanas, are metaphors: a warrior's strength, a tree's rootedness, a child's surrender. By inhabiting these forms, practitioners explore the mind's projections, like the prisoner examining the cave's mechanisms. Meditation shifts attention inward, revealing that the real world does not need the shadows. Buddhism's insight into impermanence adds another layer. The shadows in the cave constantly shift, just as sensory experiences arise and pass away. Letting go of attachments is the shared work of the philosopher and the meditator. These cross-cultural connections suggest a perennial wisdom, liberation from illusion, and compassion for those trapped in shadow. Escaping your personal cave. Understanding Plato's cave is one thing, applying it to your life is another. Imagine this: what if the limitations you see in yourself are just shadows on a wall? Shadow work offers a way to uncover what's hidden. This process involves examining the parts of yourself you've ignored or rejected, fears, insecurities, and past wounds that shape your perceptions without your awareness. These unconscious elements act like the puppeteers in the cave, casting shadows you mistake for reality. By bringing them into conscious awareness, you weaken their hold. Contemplative practices build on this foundation. Meditation trains you to observe thoughts without getting caught in them, like stepping back from the cave wall to see the shadows for what they are. Over time, this strengthens metacognition, the ability to notice your own mental processes. Advanced practitioners often describe moments of insight, where understanding arises beyond logical thought, mirroring the freed prisoner's direct experience of sunlight. Reality testing bridges theory and lived experience. The brain constructs reality from limited data, like the cave's prisoners interpreting shadows. Challenge this by seeking disconfirming evidence for your beliefs. For example, if you think, "I'm bad at public speaking," record yourself giving a talk and compare the results to your expectations. Another technique, when making decisions, list 3 alternative interpretations of the situation. This disrupts habitual thought patterns, creating space for new perspectives. Studies show this practice can reduce anxiety by weakening catastrophic thinking. Community support prevents backsliding into old patterns. The freed prisoner faced ridicule when returning to the cave, a risk anyone challenging consensus reality encounters. Surround yourself with people who encourage growth rather than reinforce limitations. Discussion groups, mentors, or online forums focused on shadow work or meditation can provide accountability. Sharing small wins and setbacks normalizes the process, reducing the shame that often drives people back to familiar shadows. Plato's cave isn't about ancient Greece, it's about your life right now. The most dangerous illusions are the ones we don't recognize as illusions. The beliefs we accept without questioning. The stories we mistake for reality. The shadows on your cave wall might be limiting self-concepts, societal expectations, or fear-driven narratives. The allegory challenges you to ask, what if reality isn't what it seems? Real transformation starts with that single question. It's not about finding immediate answers, but embracing the discomfort of curiosity. Every breakthrough begins when you dare to turn your head and question the shadows you've always taken for granted.